Good morning, everybody. If you don't mind making sure you're on mute and your camera off at the moment, that would be terrific. Thank you. Okay, everybody, we are going to get going. Thank you, everyone, for joining us today for this presentation. My name is Denise Luscombe. I'm the chair of PRACY, Professionals and Researchers in Early Childhood Intervention, and I'm on Wajak Noongar Budja in WA.
The two infants, right?
I'd like to acknowledge the traditional custodians of this land and the lands where you're joining us from today, and I pay my respect to elders past and present and to any Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander peoples here today. If you can remain off camera and on mute at the moment, that will just assist us in saving our bandwidth. Thank you. So PRACY has had a very busy month leading up to this webinar with the review of best practice in early childhood intervention consultations occurring online and around the country. So Kerry Bull and myself have thoroughly enjoyed having the opportunity to listen to so many professionals share their expertise and insights, and I can see many of you online here today. So we're currently in the process of writing this up, and just wanted to say thank you to those of you who were able to attend or completed the survey. The project continues until April next year, and we will keep you updated on the next stages of the development of the practice framework and the associated tools and resources. So please subscribe to our newsletter if you haven't already done so. But I would like to move on to the purpose of today. So I'm thrilled to be able to introduce Dr. Sarah Sexton from North Carolina. So Sarah is the director at the Family, Infant and Preschool Program, more commonly known as FIP, in Morganton, North Carolina, which I've had the pleasure of visiting numerous times on study tours and taking part in training opportunities there as well. And I looked back and realised the first visit was in 2008, so it's been a few years. So Sarah has served in the field of early childhood education for almost 30 years as an early childhood teacher, preschool director, an early Head Start director, and an early intervention administrator. She also teaches child development at Appalachian State University in Boone, North Carolina, and early childhood coaching at Rowan University in Glassboro, New Jersey. Her expertise lies in professional development coaching, personnel induction, and developing implementation and fidelity tools and measures. Sarah coordinates research and dissemination activities at FIP and has published numerous articles on strategies and products for helping practitioners reach fidelity to evidence-based practices. She serves on the Division for Early Childhood Personnel Preparation Committee, so DEC, and consults with programs and states both in the US and abroad
and similar solutions work.
Family support practice and evidence-based professional development coaching. Sarah is also on the International Expert Advisory Committee for the review of best practice in early childhood intervention project that is currently underway in Australia. So her topic today is Invite, Engage and Teach, responsive caregiving strategies to support child participation and learning. Sarah is happy for you to put any questions in the chat, and we have got Megan and Anu monitoring the chat as well for us today. So thank you very much, Megan and Anu. And there will also be time for questions at the end. So Sarah, if you would like to come on.
Yes.
Yes, you're perfect. Thanks, Sarah.
I'm here. Yes.
Thank you so much, Denise, for that very warm welcome and introduction. And I am so honored to be here with all of you. It was so gracious for you to extend this invitation to me. And I'm very excited to be talking with you today about responsive caregiving strategies. I'm hoping that you will find this enlightening and helpful at the same time. What we're going to be focusing on today during this talk is taking a journey together to dive into three categories of responsive caregiving practices that are supported by the decades of literature around how children learn and how they grow and develop and what promotes their participation in natural activities. We're going to look at some contexts in which responsive strategies are used most powerfully to promote child participation in learning. And I'm also going to leave you with some resources that you could immediately use to help align with the capacity building focus of early intervention. And we're going to talk a little bit at the end about reflective questions that can be used to coach caregivers to use responsive strategies. So I know that's a lot to tackle in 1 hour, but I think we can do it. So for decades, we've known of the profound impact that parent responsiveness has on the development of young children. Literally, hundreds of studies exist that underscore the importance of responsive caregiving interactions that influence optimal child learning and development. And I'm going to give you some examples that I found in just doing some quick searches in preparation for this talk. We know, for example, that parents who talk more to their children and use expansive vocabulary raise children who have better expressive and receptive communication skills. We know that studies have shown that responsive parenting promotes strong social emotional skills, including attunement and secure attachments. Studies have even found that maternal responsiveness enhances the physical growth of infants, particularly those with very low weight at birth. And the largest and most comprehensive global systematic review and meta analysis to date has shown that parent interventions that focus on responsive caregiving have had the most significant impact on child development across all domains. And I'd like to take us a little bit deeper into that study right now. So we know that that study included 102 randomized controlled trials of parenting interventions for children during the first 3 years of life and included 33 studies from 33 different countries. And among those studies, they found that parenting interventions improved early childhood cognitive development, language development, motor, social emotional development, attachment, and reduced challenging behaviors. And this was true in all socioeconomic levels, racial and ethnic makeups, and types of caregivers. So those were the outcomes related to children. And they found outcomes related to the parents as well. So the parent outcomes that study found was that those parenting interventions also improved parenting knowledge, parenting practices, and parent-child interactions. And again, in all socioeconomic levels, racial and ethnic makeups, and types of caregivers. Um, and although these findings were consistent among all of those different levels, the study also found that parenting intervention had the greatest effect on child cognitive language and motor development in parenting practices in low to middle income countries. And so when we think about the population of folks that we're supporting in early intervention, the age range of children and the varying makeups of the families that participate, the different kinds of caregiving configurations and family configurations, we know that really the magic sauce, the secret sauce, I like to say, is what the parents are doing between early intervention visits. We know that the most powerful part of early intervention is what's happening between visits. And so, as early interventionists, we need to think about what are we doing during the visits that sets families up to be able to make the most of what's happening between visits. And before we dive deep into kind of breaking that apart a little bit, I want us to just imagine for a minute, just imagine um, that all families understood how to use children's interest to engage them meaningfully, sustain their engagement, and build their competencies during daily routines. What would that look like? What would it look like if all parents knew how to engage their children, sustain that engagement, and to help them learn during those routines? And when I was thinking about this in preparation for this presentation, I went looking for some videos through my bank of videos, not just in what I have professionally that I use for training, but I was also went to the sort of the best gold mine I could find. I went straight to YouTube to also look at some videos and see if I could find some examples of good caregiver responsiveness. So let's take a look at what that looks like when we see high levels of parent responsiveness. I've got a few examples here. So the little toddler on the lap of the parent playing a game of peekaboo, highly responsive. I think we can all agree that that is one way that responsive caregiving looks. Let's look at another.
Look, that's your favorite game. You want to put the balls in? Put the ball in it. Drop it. Drop it in there. Yeah, that's a ball. It's got a fish in it. You want to eat it? You want to eat it? Does it taste good? Did you hear that? The fish wants you to go in the, go put it in. Let it in. You see? What happened?
Okay, another example of responsive caregiving. In fact, most of the time when I ask people to describe what does responsive caregiving look like, most people will describe one of these two scenes that I just showed to you. They'll describe a parent who's on the floor or who's at the level of the child. They're looking face to face, and the parent's giving wait time or helping scaffold the child's ability to be able to participate in some sort of play routine. But I also wanted to look for what does responsiveness look like when it's not a play routine? What about for families that don't routinely play? What are some other ways that responsiveness can look? And I found this gem right on YouTube. So I think we can all agree that that's also what responsive caregiving looks like. It can take all shapes and forms. And in fact, I have a colleague that I worked with for about 15 years before she passed away in 2016. And prior to her passing, she spent several years conducting a wide scale literature review of responsive strategies, responsive caregiving strategies. And she looked through the literature and looked at some of the studies that have been happening for decades. And she amassed a list of responsive strategies that appear in lots of different early childhood curricula, and lots of different programs and programs that are situated for children with autism, programs for children with other types of delays or disabilities. And what she found was just this huge mass of hundreds and hundreds of responsive strategies. And she went through the process of trying to reduce and combine that number of strategies to something that was manageable and to something where she could see some patterns begin to emerge. And she did see some patterns. She was able to combine those down to like strategies, and then found that those strategies all clumped into three distinct categories. So she found that there were some strategies that parents or caregivers use to set the tone for a welcoming and inviting interaction between the child and the caregiver. She found that some of the strategies, the ones there in the middle column, engage the child in a shared experience with another person or an object, or the purpose of those interactions is to sustain the child's engagement or participation in an object, a person, or an activity. And then she found that there were a group of strategies that really the purpose was kind of geared toward teaching the child something or encouraging the child to practice competencies, they really targeted the growth and the learning that could happen because the child was engaged in the activity. And she coined the terms invite, engage, and teach strategies. And then she developed a set of tools. I'm going to share those with you as resources toward the end of this presentation. But she coined this term and then developed a set of resources to help practitioners, to help early intervention personnel and early childhood folks be able to be thoughtful about how it is that they're engaging children in their participation in activities that are going to be developmentally enhancing. And so let's take a little bit of a dive into each of these categories of strategies and consider how we're using each of these categories to think about how to better empower caregivers to serve in that role of teacher to their child, to help caregivers serve in that role as the mediator of children's learning experiences. So when we talk about the invite strategies, again, we're thinking about those strategies that caregivers can use to help set the stage for a child's interaction. So watching where the child is looking is a really easy strategy that caregivers use. Watching where the child's eye gaze is and seeing what the child finds interesting, seeing if we can attend to the same thing the child's attending to. Smiling and laughing kind of draws the child in and prepares them for an interaction with you. Using one or two words to get the child's attention. especially if those one or two words is something that you already know that the child might find interesting. In my home right now, I have a teenage son. My niece lives with me. She's in her early 20s, and she has an 18-month-old little boy, and he also lives with us. And in my home, if I were going to use one or two words to capture the household's attention, it would be popcorn. Does somebody smell popcorn? And everybody in the house has got their attention grabbed. So sometimes it's just one or two words that sets the stage, showing the child something of interest, right? And if I'm in my kitchen getting ready to cook and I want the 18-month-old to be in there with me and not trying to play on the stairs, I'm going to shake a bag of something. It doesn't matter what it is, and he doesn't know what's in it, but it's going to sound like food, and food is one of his interests, and he's going to come running. Getting down on the child's level. We saw a lot of that happening in the different videos that we just watched a few minutes ago. Using an inviting voice, modulating your voice, getting quiet, getting excited. It's that change in voice that oftentimes draws the child's attention in and lets them know that something fantastic is getting ready to happen, and they might want to be a part of it. And then demonstrating or modeling. So sometimes we might do something that we know the child is going to find interesting, and that's going to capture their attention and turn their attention toward us. And so these are some of the specific strategies that we might use. We might know of these strategies, heard of them, used them before, but maybe we haven't really thought about them in terms of, okay, this is how we set the stage. And even if we have thought about this is how we set the stage, how often do we help parents and other caregivers think about how they can use these strategies to set the stage? We're kind of like breaking down invite strategies into a bit of a task analysis so that we can intentionally teach that to a caregiver or support a caregiver's use of it so that we can notice it when it's happening and reinforce that a caregiver has used it or might be using it. And I think what you'll find if you watch for these things is you'll find that to a large extent, caregivers are doing some of these in some measure or to some extent. And if we tune in our instrument, if we fine tune our instrument of observation and watch and notice and see when parents are using this, it will help us figure out how to help reinforce those strategies to continue to happen. So, to help us fine tune our instrument a little bit, I'm going to give us a task to do. So I've got 3 video snippets, and these are just short. Actually, the first one's probably the longest one, but they're each just a few seconds to maybe a little over a minute. And as you watch the little bit of video, I want you to think about and maybe even pop into the chat. What are the invite strategies that you see the caregiver using? What's the caregiver doing that's setting the tone for an inviting interaction? Okay. And you can just feel free to pop it into chat. You don't need to wait until the video's over. You can just, as you see things, you can go ahead and do that.
Snow. That's snow, right? What's that? What's that? Snow. It's the snow. Ooh, it's cold. Thank you. Yeah. Thank you. Thank you. Good girl. Thank you. Thank you. Good job. Thanks.
Excellent. All right. I'm seeing lots of things pop up in the chat. Some of you have noticed that she got down on the child's level, got face to face with the child, used a calm voice, even modulated the voice a little bit, used 2-word phrases, right? Watched where the child was watching, so looked where the child was looking, even demonstrated how to hold the snow in her hand, kept it simple, kept repeating. Yep. All the body language. Yeah. So lots of different little strategies. And what I have found from the years I've spent orienting new early intervention providers to early intervention is all of these little cues that we see parents and caregivers do sometimes just go over our heads and we don't realize how important they are. And so I'm very excited that we're having this opportunity to kind of look at these real life activities and see if we can notice it in action. Because noticing it is what's going to help us be able to talk about it to families. Let's take a look at another one. This one, the family's out on the playground.
Hey, look up. Do it again. Okay, yeah.
Wow.
Say, I need help now.
So we do.
Okay, that was the super quick one. Did you see what the dad did? What did he do that was invite strategies? Supporting. How did he support the child? What did he do? Put his hand out, held the child's hand. At the very beginning, picked her up and put her on the slide so that she was positioned to be able to participate. Praised her. Yeah. So even just these little snippets, these little few seconds provide lots and lots of opportunities for invite strategies to happen. Let's watch one more. This is a mom helping her little baby after bath time get his lotion rub down, his little massage.
Are you ready? You ready for your lotion? You know what's coming? Are you ready? I'm gonna do your legs, okay? Let's do this one first, okay? I'm gonna do this one. Rub it down. Rub it down. Yeah, do you like that? Does it feel good?
Okay. So holding her hand out, showing the baby what she was getting ready to do, preparing him with some simple questions, preparing the child. So lots of little things that we saw. You might have noticed that she also used 1 to 2 word sentences to get his attention. She's also down on his level using a very friendly and inviting voice. She's looking back at where his gaze is. She's prompting him. I don't know if you all saw this, but yeah, Monica, tapping on his leg to prepare him, to help him know what's getting ready to come. Yeah. So that's as simple as invite strategies can be. It doesn't have to be something complex. It doesn't have to be something that takes a lot of planning. And I think that what you'll find is when you go looking for it, most families, most caregivers have a degree of inviting strategies that they already use. And we know that building on people's strengths is helpful. So building on the inviting strategies that we know caregivers are already using is helpful, and then helping them strengthen those, use them more intentionally, and then add on some inviting strategies that they may not have thought about or may not know. Or they may be engaging with a child who's a little harder to engage. And so helping them think about what are some strategies they might have to use with this other child who's a little bit harder to engage. So speaking of engage, let's look at the strategies that are included when we talk about engage strategies. So this is where the caregiver might choose to do the same thing that the child is doing. So the caregiver imitates the child as a way of engaging the child with the caregiver, responding to the child immediately and positively. We saw a little bit of that in the first videos where invite was the focus that we were looking for. But it's hard to find invite strategies without also seeing some engage strategies being used as well. So positioning the child to be successful, right? So making sure that they're close enough to what they want to interact with, making sure that they're at the right height. If they're at a stander, the stander has them positioned well. If they're in some sort of seating device, that the seating device has the correct support so that they can reach and grab and balance and do all of the things that they need to be able to do to successfully participate. Listen fully. You know, if the child is telling you something, listen without interrupting. Listen to the whole thing that the child is saying before you respond. Make sure that they know that they're heard. That really does pull them in and kind of keeps them in. Narrate what the child is doing. This is a very common one that we see all the time. In fact, if a parent doesn't know what else to do, this is an excellent one to help them learn how to do, because it eliminates any awkward silences that parents might not feel comfortable with or caregivers might not know what to do with. So you can always narrate what the child is doing. Helping the child with the frustrating parts. In early childhood education, we call that scaffolding, right? Giving them just enough help to keep them engaged without frustrating them too much so that they leave the activity. So giving them just that bit of help. So let's take a look at what some engaged strategies might look like, right? Let's take a look at what they might look like in action. So the first video we're going to watch is the parent playing on the floor. Again, we've seen this parent a couple of times already. Let's see if when we watch it this time, when we watch this segment, we can see what the parent is doing to engage the child, what engage strategies are being used. And feel free to pop this in the chat as well. As you see strategies being used, go ahead and name them.
The yellow ball in there? No? You want the blocks? Let me get it out for you. Because of red and purple and yellow, blue, and green. You want the blue one?
All right, what did we see happening there? What was that parent doing to engage the child? She was narrating. Yeah. So first she was narrating what the child was doing when the child was grabbing for the blocks, and then she was narrating what she was doing, identifying the colors, responding immediately to the child. Scaffolding. So when pulling the blocks out of the bag is a little frustrating, and she didn't give the child a lot of wait time to get frustrated, but she knew that that activity was a little above the child's developmental level, and so she helped pull them out. Positioning. So she positioned the child really close to the toys that the child wanted to play with and then moved some other toys closer. She put her own body behind the child so that she would be able to sit up and be able to participate. Yeah. So lots of strategies to help the child become engaged and to help the child keep the child engaged. So when she lost interest in the little fishbowl game, the mom quickly pulled something that she saw was of interest to the child into the game to continue to allow the play to happen. All right, let's watch something that's less contrived than this play scenario, and requires less planning and less sort of creating a situation or creating a scenario on behalf of the parent. This is just a grandpa holding his baby and having some interaction. So as we watch this grandpa interact with his grandson, pop into the chat what engaged strategies you see happening here. This is just an everyday occurrence.
You have to play that? Have you seen the blanket on the ground? That's it. Just because we are married don't mean we can sleep around. Don't tell me to stop it. So let them walk down by the river.
All right, what did we see happening in that one? What were some engaged strategies that you saw? doing the same thing, right? So he was doing his version of imitating the baby, and then the baby was sort of imitating him. They had this back and forth, copying the baby's babbling, um, responding immediately, absolutely, doing the same thing. And I see lots of you saying the positioning, right? So him positioning his grandson right on his chest, face to face with him, right where they can have that good interaction, encouraging that communication. And then I see that somebody also noticed the animation on his face as he's interacting with the baby. That's another invite strategy being brought into this, that facial expression is just drawing that baby's interest in. And then also the pace that he was having. He really matched that baby's pace in his vocalizations. And you could see that he was even establishing that turn taking. Now, that turn taking really gets into the next category of strategies that we're going to talk about, the teach strategies. There was a lot going on in this one, and it's a great example of what invite, engage, and teach looks like across the continuum. So there are lots and lots of things happening. There's even an engage strategy on the list that's something to the extent of listen while your child tells you things. This would be the infant's equivalent of telling his papa things. So the baby's telling the papa things and the papa's listening and responding to those things. And if you can have this like this visualization in your mind, for as long as this grandpa responds to this baby, and as long as this baby responds to this grandpa, this engagement will persist, right? So, what this grandpa's doing, whether he knows it or not, whether it's intentional or not, is he's creating an opportunity for this interaction to last longer than it would otherwise because of all of the things that he's doing, because of the voice, because of the facial expression, because of the timing and the pacing of his vocalizations compared to the grandson's vocalizations. Those are the things that are making this activity last longer. And we know the longer the activity lasts, the more opportunity the child has to learn and grow through participation. And so it's really helping his learning. And this grandpa might not even know that that's what it's doing. Let's take a look at one more. This is a family outside enjoying the fall leaves.
Go, wee! Yay, leaves! Yay, leaves! Go ahead, pop them up. Yeah! Ah! Ah! Go crazy! Go crazy! Crunch, crunch, crunch. Crunch, crunch, crunch. Crunch, 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 crunch. Yeah! There you go. Now where you gonna go? Covered in leaves.
Excellent. All right. I see taking turns, following the child's lead, getting down on the child's level, imitating. Yes, all of those things. Still short 1 or 2 word phrases, keeping it at the level of the child. And all of that got the child engaged with him and kept the child engaged. Let's take a look at what we mean by teach strategies. So this is where once the child's engaged and we have sort of some sustained engagement, we can help the child learn something new. So the caregiver might show the child a new way to do something, might let the child make a mistake and try to recover from the mistake. It might mean giving a little bit of extra wait time for the child to do something particularly hard. It's that fine balance between not letting them get too frustrated, but also letting them have the experience of working through something and figuring something out. It also might mean providing some physical support to help the child be successful. Again, a level of scaffolding. Maybe starting and waiting for the child to respond. So giving a little bit, that wait time that we talked about. And maybe starting with some small steps and increasing the level of difficulty. And so maybe making the activity last just a little longer or making the steps in it just a little bit harder for the child to try to accomplish. So keeping those things in mind, let's watch some examples of what teach strategies might look like in real life settings. So here's little toddler trying to do some climbing up on his fireplace.
You want me to hold this while you try to get up? No, you can do it. Okay, okay. You can do it. Mom will let you. Up.
All right, what did we see this caregiver doing that we would call a teach strategy? Giving the opportunity to learn. What did she do? How did she give an opportunity to learn? If we had to describe what that looks like, the extra wait time, right? So she could have done a little bit of scaffolding right there and given him a leg up, and she chose not to. She chose to give extra wait time, to wait for the child to do it. While she was waiting, she gave some words of encouragement, didn't she? Yeah. She let the child to decide how the child was going to do what they wanted to do. And then she gave the wait time and she gave some encouragement. I'm going to come down to this one and let's take a look at, yes, the verbal prompts. Yes, up. Let's take a look at this one and see what teach strategies we can identify.
Look, everybody, it's moss!
It's moss. Isn't it neat?
What does moss feel like?
It's so beautiful.
So soft, isn't it?
So soft. Bye, moss.
Bye, moss.
See ya.
See you later.
It's so
There's two different kinds there, too, I think.
All right, what did we see happening there? I see following the child's lead, simple phrases, shared excitement. How many of you saw the parent showing some of the detail? How many of you saw the parent showing something that the child hadn't already seen? So, I think there's two kinds right there, right? So now drawing the child's attention to something new, something the child hasn't noticed yet. That kind of thing is going to draw the child back in and give the child an opportunity to learn something that they didn't already know. Yeah, the repetition of the key words is also a teach strategy. That's how children learn language. So stopping based on the child's language, adding some words, reinforcing the vocabulary the child is using, adding some words and extending it. All of those are also teach strategies. Teach strategies can also be those skilled interventions that you use that you might teach caregivers in part or in whole to use with their own child. I'm going to show you one more. This is one of my favorites. And I'm going to, oops, there we go.
Can't quite.
Hold on, I'm trying to get us to a, whoops.
Can't quite.
You said you want to sit down?
Yes. Sit down. Yes.
Yes.
Let's see you right now. Right now.
Right now? You want to do something right now? What would you like to do?
Blue.
In the blue?
Blue.
You want Zaina to get out? I don't know if Zaina wants to get out or not. I don't know.
See you right now. See you right now. See you right now. See you right now.
Zaina's in the blue box right now.
In the box right now. Get out, get out, get out. Come out.
Trying to come out? Is it hard to do?
Ah!
Do you feel stuck? You feel stuck? Here. Is your leg stuck, honey? You want to lift your leg up? Can you get it now? Oh, you did it. Were you worried for a moment?
Oops. All right. So we saw in that one prompting, giving wait time, lots of caregiver attunement, giving words to the child to scaffold their communication. We saw one of the children speaking in very one-word utterances, and the caregiver was expanding those just to two-word utterances, making sure that the child knew she understood the message that was coming across, giving the child some words to match the emotions that she was feeling. That you were scared, weren't you? You were scared when you couldn't get out. So all of those pieces, not to mention helping the children express themselves to one another, to be able to talk to one another, and to be able to respect one another's perspective and point of view in the situation. The children were learning to trust the caregiver and trust that the situation was going to be just for them. So we saw lots of things happening in that situation. The resources that I have on screen right now, these are the resources that are included in the handouts that are going to be made available to you directly after the presentation, and also where the recording of the presentation will be posted. And so each of these booklets is a parent responsive strategy or caregiver responsive strategy booklet that deals with a particular type of situation. And so the one in the front is, these are all responsive strategies to help promote social engagement. So if children are struggling with that and those are strategies that parents can benefit from, then that might be the right booklet to use. The one that says HUGS on it, HUGS, is when children and parents have challenging interactions with one another that might be intense, things that caregivers might call challenging behaviors. And so those are specific responsive strategies that are particularly effective in those situations. The green one is responsive strategies that are particularly effective in working with newborns or babies under 6 months. And then caregiver responsiveness, those are sort of strategies that are good for all seasons and all ages. So those are some resources that you can use, as well as a set of infographics that I've also included on natural learning environment practices, including caregiver responsiveness. So it kind of summarizes a lot of what we've talked about today. And I just want to touch on before we end the coaching piece of this, because it's one thing to know what these responsive strategies look like and to be able to identify them and do them. But it's a lot more difficult to figure out, how do we scaffold the adult learning when we're thinking about how to support adults who are learning how to use responsive strategies to support the participation and the learning of their children. And that's really where coaching comes into play. And one of the most thoughtful and convincing reasons to use coaching and to be really good at using coaching when we work with caregivers in early intervention, I learned from reading the book How People Learn and How People Learn Too. And the convincing piece of research, you might want to take note of this, because some of you might not have heard this before, but I will tell you, I've experienced this in my own life. People do not like to be told what to do. They don't. People don't like to be told what to do. Even if what you're telling them is good advice, the fact that they're being told what to do or having to be shown what to do sometimes is a turnoff to folks. And so when we engage in a coaching interaction, we're helping people figure out what they want to do in light of the information that we're giving them. So we share information with them about how children learn. We share information about the role of interest. We share information about responsive strategies and help families figure out what they want to do with that information and how they want to use it to support their children. And so when we think about coaching, we're thinking about using it as an adult learning strategy that promotes the learner's ability to reflect on their actions, to determine the effectiveness of the actions, and plan for refinement and use in immediate and in future situations. And many of you might be familiar with the Early Childhood Coaching Handbook. This definition is from that handbook from Rush and Sheldon in 2020. So when we think about how we're using coaching when it comes to helping caregivers be responsive, we're using our reflective questions and informative feedback to help get caregivers identify what they're already doing, just like we identified in those videos that we saw. So we want to help them identify what they're already doing. We want to help them identify how this strategy is helpful. And so there's lots of questions that you might ask to help them identify that. So what's your child learning when you do that? What is she able to do when you help her that way? How do you know what you're doing is working to help your child? So lots of questions you might use in that vein. We want to help caregivers identify new strategies. So we might ask questions like, what else could you do to provide her with just a little more help? We might ask, what ideas do you have for your next steps? We might even want to provide a little bit of information, here's an idea for what you could do to help him stay a little longer. What do you think about that idea? We want to make sure that any strategies or ideas that we are sharing fit within the family's values and fit within the family's culture, because there's lots and lots and lots of ways to promote child learning. And it doesn't have to be just our thought about it. It doesn't have to be just our paradigm. We can help families who come from whatever culture and have whatever values and preferences to be able to identify what they might use. And then we also want to use some reflective questions to help families identify places that they might want to use the strategies. So we might ask questions like, during which of your family activities do you think this would be helpful? Or when during your day could you try that? Or what parts of your day would you like to see this outcome you're getting right now? And that helps families think about how to spread what they're doing beyond what they've already been doing. I want to show you just a quick little video of a speech language pathologist using coaching to help a parent identify some responsive strategies with a child. And then we will wrap up.
So this is a teaching moment where I would teach her what you want her to think when she says daddy. So I would say her actions, oh, you like sitting with daddy. When she turns at you and does that, you say, oh yeah, you like hanging out.
Oh, you like sitting with daddy, don't you? Daddy. Yeah.
And then you would say, oh, you like daddy's hugs, or you like to give daddy a hug. That's another option. What would you like to have her think when she says your name?
Okay.
It's a hard one, isn't it? Yeah.
Daddy.
Can you say I love daddy?
Daddy. You give daddy kisses?
You love daddy?
No.
You like to play ball with dad.
It's almost like she was trying to say it.
All right, so that's just a quick little example of a portion of a visit where the speech language pathologist is trying to help the parent identify some teach strategies that he might want to use. And the SLP offered a couple of ideas, but then immediately turned it over to the father to say, what do you want her to think when she uses your name, so that they can start to reinforce that and help the child with their communication. So that's just one example of what that might look like. Oops.
You can play with that in a minute. Let's
Sorry,
walk over here.
I didn't mean to do that. So when we focus on responsive strategies, we maximize the impact of what happens between visits by focusing on building the caregiver's confidence with responsiveness during the visit. That's our important focus. And when we do that, we see outcomes like learning occurring all day long, and we see skills develop within natural contexts. We see parent confidence increasing, their competence increasing, and most importantly, we see parenting enjoyment increase. We see the child's participation and competence increase, and specifically their competence across all developmental domains, because these natural opportunities tend to include lots and lots of different domains at the same time. And we see children becoming lifelong learners in their natural environments. One of the things that I've included with your handouts is a list of references. And as we make time for questions, I'd like to invite you all to use our QR code to follow us on social media, because as we post more handouts like the ones I'm including with this training, you'll be the first to hear about it and to access it. So let me pause and give you a chance to do that, and also see if there are any questions.
Would anybody like to come off mute and ask Sarah a question at all? There's no additional questions in the chat there, Sarah.
Right.
Anybody like to take the opportunity? I think for myself, Sarah, I just it's, thank you for sharing so many practical strategies. And you obviously provided the research behind it, but then put it into to practice so that you can really see what it's meant to look like. And people often say, what does it look like when considering? But I also loved the simplicity and really how you highlighted that we need to use our observation skills to really unpack what the parents and caregivers are doing. It also reminded me about the importance of our modelling and the importance for us to also be responsive in our modelling and not slip into a directive mode. And you highlighted that really beautifully with coaching and the use of coaching.
It's interesting, Denise, because we talk all the time about how parents should read children's cues and that they should pick up on the nuances of what children are doing and what children are communicating. But how often do we hone our own instrument of reading what the parents are doing and picking up on the nuances of what parents already bring to the table, the strengths they're already bringing? And we're just as guilty as we sometimes think that parents might be when we don't observe for that.
Yeah. Sarah, there has been a question in the chat. It was about extending the strategies in centre-based intervention settings. It said they believe it's transferable.
Absolutely. So I try to make a point of calling them caregiver responsive strategies, because they're not specific to parents or parenting or even in the home setting. The strategies that were used here in these videos can be used in any context by any caregiver, including caregivers in centers, including grandparents, parents, aunts, uncles, siblings. Anyone who provides care to children can use these same strategies.
Thanks for that, Sarah. And there's just been highlighted about the practical applications, and we will send out all the information. People are just asking about that, so just reinforcing that they get that. And Helen has just mentioned there that she works with parents with intellectual disabilities. So yeah, love that section about scaffolding with the parents. So, so thank you very much. You did perfect timing. And again, people talking about the simplicity, of it and being able to take these things away. So look, again, Sarah, I would just like to say thank you very much for sharing all of the information that you've provided for us today and allowed us a way to translate that into practice straight away. So really appreciate that and look forward.
The pleasure is all mine, Denise.
We look forward to continuing to follow you and to, have the opportunities to continue, I guess, these conversations in the future.
Yes.
And thank you as well for being on our expert advisory group. I think people can see how valuable that is for us as we develop the practice framework.
My pleasure.
Thank you, everybody. And thank you so much, Sarah, for joining us at night, which I didn't say at the beginning. So have a good night.
Yes. And you all have a good morning. Good rest of your day.
Thanks, Sarah.
You're
Thanks.
welcome.